Hi, Patty. Welcome to your Author on Demand private reading. When we met a few weeks ago, I thought we were meeting for the first time. And then you reminded me that we already knew each other. So that was fun, running into an old friend. And in our email exchanges, we discovered similarities, synchronicities, and some silly things like we had an eye exam on the same day, and then some other things like we both lived in Des Moines, and I can't remember. There were a lot of them. So we've got these, it's like these parallel attitudes and interests, and they're not even parallel, they're identical, that you wouldn't necessarily expect upon meeting somebody, that so many of these similarities would happen. So I was thinking today that I wonder, as we become reacquainted and talk to each other more frequently now, if we'll notice where our experiences diverge only because of race. So that's going to be something interesting to follow in our friendship. Well, you picked one of my favorites, the essay titled Good People, from my book, Blindsided, Essays from the Only Black Woman in the Room. Thank you for reading it. So I'm going to read the story, Good People, to you, and then we'll start out talking about why this particular one jumped out for you and see where it goes from there. Good People. Harmony Vineyard Church, summer. My husband and I visited on a whim the first time. We lived just down the road. We returned the second time because Ben liked the music. I liked tagging along on his whims, but I was wary. White churches made me nervous. The preacher read the announcements from the bulletin and chuckled about the typos he encountered. He said, "This must have been written by some illiterate Italian who can't speak English." I elbowed Ben. "Did you hear that? He just made a racist joke." Ben said, "I know. Yeah." He was alarmed, but not as mad as I was. When the minister said illiterate Italian, I heard a lifetime of nigger. Hogan Preparatory Academy, fall. Crossing the Midtown High School campus in search of the football stadium, I was a bit self-conscious. I would probably be the only Black person at the game rooting for the white school my nephew attended. He was star wide receiver. I would join my neighbors and chat about life in the suburbs. Our split-level homes built on lawns too big for us to maintain without a lawn service. I'd ask if mums were on sale yet at our neighborhood nursery, which would lead to grousing that the perennial bed around the corner put my flower beds to shame. We parents would grow solemn about our boys' slim chance for victory over Hogan Preparatory Academy. Hogan Prep was state champions. and they had a home field advantage to boot. Harmony Vineyard Church, summer. During the minister's sermon, the unyielding pew pressed against my back. I composed a rebuttal sermon, peppered with how dare yous and shame on you, and a fusillade of you don't knows. But maybe I should give the preacher the benefit of the doubt. Let this whole thing drop. We'd never come back here anyway. I fidgeted. Parishioners flipped through their hymnals. Some yawned. Like it was an ordinary Sunday. I drummed my fingers on Ben's knee. Why didn't they stand up and demand an apology? Probably because they agreed with the slur about Italians. Probably because the insult was ordinary. Probably because they didn't want me here. If they hated Italians, they sure as hell hated me. It was no longer Kansas City, Missouri, 2003. It was Montgomery, Alabama, 1961. Hogan Preparatory Academy, fall. As I crossed the school ground, 3 black teenagers sauntered toward me, dressed in baggy pants and shirts that hung to their knees. Shoulder punching emphasized their banner, which was laced with an occasional dude and bro. When they were close enough, I stopped them. Excuse me, is the football field this way? Yes, ma'am. If you continue down the walkway, you'll find it directly on your left, one of them said. And then all 3 in unison. Have a nice day. I said, thanks, you too, and headed in the direction they pointed. Something was off, like a video playback had glitched. I paused and looked over my shoulder at them. They were still poking, still teasing, their voices fading into the autumn breeze. I rewound that video. My jaw dropped. Oh no. Harmony Vineyard Church, summer. After the service, I said, I'm going down to meet the minister. Ben chuckled. Right, I'll bet you are. It tickled him when I got feisty and stood up for myself. The idea of little me taking down this preacher puffed up my husband with pride. His pride was misplaced. Although my squared shoulders signaled confidence, I was trembling. I trudged down the aisle to the front of the sanctuary, where the pastor stood greeting his flock. He smiled when we shook hands. I pushed my dreadlocks off my face and took a deep breath. We, my husband and I, visited last Sunday and today. We felt welcome until that joke about Italians. I don't feel welcome anymore. His smile dissolved. He said, oh, let me explain. We're doing a pizza fundraiser with an Italian restaurant, and I'm not here to accuse you of anything or make assumptions about your motives. Maybe there was still a way to let him off the hook, a way to end this awkward exchange. I usually shrank away from conflict. I shocked myself, standing firm. I said, that remark, It made me think, when will it be my turn? When will you all make fun of me? He said, that won't ever happen. When you get to know me better, you'll understand. One arm open, gesturing to an unseen audience, he recited his accomplishments in the area of diversity. He listed the church's contributions to civic committees, their initiatives on behalf of immigrants, and their programs for inner city youth. It sounded like a talk to the Chamber of Commerce. I said, I'm new to your church. I didn't know you when you made the joke. He draped his arm. He dropped his arm to his side. He shifted his weight from one foot to the other. He cleared his throat. My temples throbbed. He sighed. I apologize. It wasn't very smart. Thank you for your courage and honesty. He draped his arm across my shoulders, uninvited. I hope you and your husband will come back. I cringed and took a step backward. Hogan Preparatory Academy, fall. A gust of wind blew leaves across the walkway. I was stunned by those boys because they sounded like college professors instead of gangster rappers. I cringed at my realization and took a step backward. Harmony Vineyard Church, summer. Ben eased the Chevy out of the parking lot into the street. He said, awfully quiet. You okay? No. What happened? Well, he's not a bad guy, but that's worse. Ben said, meaning? Good people are so sure about not being prejudiced, they don't see themselves. They don't listen. Hogan Preparatory Academy, fall. The metal bleachers were unforgiving, hard as church pews. Parents cheered and hollered through the game as though it were an ordinary day. The noise failed to drown out the anguish wailing inside my mind. I had reduced those kids to my racist expectations. When they'd given me directions, had shock registered on my face? The possibility made me sick. I wailed at all the suspicion they endured. I wailed at the image of white ladies who stiffened their shoulders and clutched their purses at the approach of 3 Black teens. How often did I clutch my purse? The announcer blared, goes out for the pass. He's at the 30, the 20, knocked out of bounds. Hogan Prep trounced our team. My nephew would be inconsolable. I climbed down from the bleachers, reluctant to face him. Thanks.
So powerful, for sure. And I chose this for several reasons or values. what immediately struck me was that in my college days, I was fiance, my boyfriend, I guess, wasn't a fiance yet, preached in a small church, country church in Texas.
Mm.
He had a Sunday assignment. So I was transported there, first of all. And then, um, so there's associations about being on the pew and kind of being there with you and Ben.
Mhm.
But more than the thing I really connected to in my reading was your interaction with the preacher, the minister.
Mhm.
And when I read it, I admired your courage. And at some level, I think I must have put myself in the role of the minister, being a white person.
Mhm.
And as I read the transaction, I know in my early days of my building relationships with my Black brothers and sisters that I, on several occasions, was on the receiving end of feedback. And I know that I attempted to listen because I'm a firm believer in compassionate communication and listen.
Mhm.
And that it at that point it behooved me to listen and then respond with what I heard. Then I went the extra step to say where I was coming from. So I put myself not quite in the same vein as the minister, but as a white person receiving feedback and feeling inclined to share.
Mhm.
Well, after reading White Fragility, the book, I realized that's not the way to be in the
Mm.
actions. It's not. There's no need to try to say what was going on. But so you get my point. I'm in, he's explaining,
Mhm.
like, oh, okay, brother, be careful.
Mhm.
You're explaining, but I kind of have some empathy for you, but you're not getting it. And I
Mhm.
didn't explain the way he did. I mean, he was
Mhm.
evasive and couldn't get it at all.
Mhm.
But then fast forward, Don, to you all had an interaction, and at some level he apologized, and then he reached out. And I was thinking, well, wasn't that a kind gesture on his part? And then I realized, now wait a minute, especially when I heard you read it, it was unasked for. Uh, you didn't ask for it, and he didn't ask you if it was okay, that he stepped into your space. But when I first read it, it's like I could envision myself. Well, could I really? Let me just see.
Yes. Yes.
I don't think I could envision myself reaching out to hug the primarily two women that I have been on the receiving end of. But I can imagine wanting to be able to be in a loving space in receiving what they had the courage to tell me, if that
Mhm.
makes any sense at all.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
That,
Mhm. Mhm.
that I would now what I've learned is what I practice, what I want to do is say, let me see, Dawn, what you were telling me is, oh my gosh, yeah,
Mhm. Mhm.
how,
Mhm.
yes, let me think about this, how that landed on
Mhm.
me.
Mhm. Mhm.
Oh, oh my
Mhm.
goodness. Oh my goodness.
Mhm. Mhm.
goodness, no wonder you're telling me this, you
Yeah.
know. And Dawn, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for pointing that out. Thank you for having the courage to come up here and tell me that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Please, I would like some time to think about this. And if you're willing, even if I would love, after I've reflected, to talk with you further about this if you wanted to, but not if. Just please, at this point, please tell me that you've heard me
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that I've heard you, that I've really taken it in. And if I never see you again, you know, I just say thank you.
Yeah.
So now I can move into that space, especially after hearing you read,
Mm-hmm.
because the way he was, you emphasized it all. And he's a man. He was probably large, you know, and accustomed to being that kind of good old boy. But okay, here we can just kumbaya. We're okay, right? Right, right, sister. Aren't we okay? You're gonna come back, you know. I can see that. Anyway, that's kind of a lot of jumble,
Mm-hmm.
but that's the part I really connected to. And so I will tell you, I mentioned to Roanne that I was going to be doing this one.
Mm-hmm.
Roanne was on it. She said, I said, well, and she said, Patty, he was uninvited,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
thing to do. So you can see I'm on a learning curve too, even in the reading.
Yeah, welcome to welcome
Well,
to the learning curve, because God, aren't we all?
yeah, because then, that's all juxtaposed to running into those three guys.
Yeah,
And your
yeah, 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 yeah.
your authentic admission of that, you know? And so it's there. So between you and me, I feel that mutuality,
Mm-hmm.
first of all, because of that. And
Mm-hmm.
I see your face kind of nodding, and yes. So
Mm-hmm. 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 Mm-hmm.
thinks out loud. So that's
Mm-hmm.
my
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
loud. And now I want to hear from you.
That was a really dramatic difference in before and after, and in reading it on your own and then hearing me read it. That was a pretty dramatic difference in your response. I
Yes.
um, One of the things I learned, and this is true of apologies and saying to another person, you hurt my feelings, and needing an apology, is true in general, that it's very difficult to just be on the receiving end of someone else's pain. It feels so helpless to do nothing. Doing anything gets me out of my own pain, gets me out of this uncomfortable place. And one of the things that um, people of color find is that when we relate experiences, the response is talking and explaining, and that's not the same as listening. And so one doesn't feel heard. Um, it's a really hard place for anybody to get to. But it's exactly what you said, to say, oh, I hear what you're saying. Let me take this in and ponder it. Let me take it in. The invitation to take in the pain is that's big. That's big. And so that was one element. Another element was, the majority of the time I let things pass. partly because there are too many things that come up too frequently to address everyone in that moment, partly because I just don't like conflict. And I have the assumption that it's going to turn out badly, that I won't be heard. And so what's the point? Every once in a while, something happens inside where I get that feeling, oh God,
Mhm.
I can't let this one go. I have to say something. And when it was a preacher making a racist joke from the pulpit, I could not let it go. Fortunately, I had the hour or so to sit there in my own, um, so that I wasn't angry and reactive, because that approach doesn't make you hurt either.
Yeah.
So I was lucky that it happened in a place where I was forced to sit with my own yuckiness and not do nothing, combined with um, years of meditation practice and looking at feelings and stuff. So I think I was helped a lot by that. And, but it was hard. The thing about, he was kind of a creepy guy. And so
Sorry, I can understand more about no, no, no.
he immediately was on stage like it was a prepared speech. And so that was pretty inauthentic. Um,
Yeah.
and the whole touching thing, oh man, you got everything mixed in there. It's a power thing. There was a power differential. He's the minister of this giant church, and I'm just a visitor. Even if I'd been a regular parishioner, I would have been just a parishioner, and there would have been a power differential. And so it did not feel like a gesture of kindness. Sometimes that is a gesture of kindness. Frequently, it is not. I don't think that anybody should assume permission to touch another person. And in our Western culture, we assume it's okay to hug each other. It's not. And women have violated my personal space in this way as frequently as men.
Mhm. Yeah.
So there's that whole thing. And then the, I think for me, the big transformative issue for me was experiencing how I'd been inflicted with this virus of racism, and and it manifested. And I didn't say anything to these kids, but there was no denying the shock I felt when they answered me in perfect English. That is so racist.
Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't turn away from that either.
Yeah.
So, and I hope that if I, as a good person, can see my racism, that good people of other races can say, oh, yeah, okay, if she is, yeah, I can see how I am too, how I express racism in my life too. And that's been a real hurdle to overcome with well intentioned people. Good people do not listen, Patty.
Oh, I know. It's just, yeah.
Anytime I'm convinced of anything, I can't hear a different experience.
Yeah. Yeah. It really challenges us. I just read something that it's called the title that it helped me was confirmation bias. So, we put in things that confirm our bias,
Yes.
but when they're out of the range of what we think or believe,
Mhm.
it's just everything in our body and our mind
Mhm.
and our
Mhm. Mhm.
whatever. It's like, no, and it happens in a triggered,
Yes.
and almost without realizing it, that trigger happened.
Mhm. 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 Mhm.
So how to be, meditation and all that helps, but how to be aware of that trigger, first of all, and then say, okay, let me take a deep breath
Yeah.
and see how I can take this in and listen. The listening is just, it's just incredible. And it's interesting because in that one of my very first interactions, I did do a damn good job of listening. And this was in a meeting, and we had taken a pledge between people of color and whites to talk. So it was after the meeting,
Mhm.
and I did it really, I think. However, then I stepped in and said, "Well, let me show you how I experienced that same event." And I left thinking, "Oh gosh, this is wonderful. This is wonderful." I
Mhm.
think we resolved to come back the next in the meeting. She even said, "I felt one upped by you. You put me in my place." It was like, what? So that's when I learned. Yeah, okay, listen. And the other part, anyway, so you get my point. Listening, yes, listening, and not trying to center it back.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's the other thing I've learned is how we whites love to center it somehow, that it's about us,
Mhm.
you know, not
Mhm.
what the impact was.
Mhm. Mhm.
You
Mhm. Mhm.
and to me, it's the impact of the words on you.
Mhm. Mhm.
You know,
Mhm.
you didn't interact with the young three black men, but I can see myself feeling that way toward them, being surprised. In fact, I've had a recent experience of that. I can't quite remember, but it's like, what? This person has a college degree. I didn't know that. It's like, oh, Patty, really? Did you just think that?
Did you just think that? Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
know. I
I'm
know.
sorry. I'm a part of this system.
Mhm.
But to hear that you, as a black woman, also has to struggle with that is just like, that really confirms that
Mhm.
our system is so pervasive, that we are swimming in those waters. All of us are.
Yeah.
All of us.
Yeah. 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 Thank you for that, Patty.
Yeah. And you said earlier, and you said as we proceeded in that friendship, um, you know, I just don't know what I would have done if I'd been a white person hearing him say that.
Right.
And I just, when I hear, and you said earlier that you hope that this writing would help readers feel in our bodies, what it,
Mhm.
which is what
Mhm.
you are doing, and which is what is happening as I hear you read on this two times I have. That
Mhm.
it you your authenticity and your vulnerability is a gift.
Mm. Thank you. Yeah.
So,
Hmm.
so those young boys, I just now I'm kind of thinking about them. They're having the grandest time, probably enjoying every piece of jewelry they had on and every piece of what I just can see them, you know.
And just being high school kids, they had no idea. They just blew this old woman's mind.
Yeah.
And
So,
I have never forgotten those boys.
yeah. Well, so what did you do with your awareness? I mean, how was your awareness? Was it just your awareness, or did you struggle with it, or did you?
Oh, I was so embarrassed. It made me sick to think, first of all, to think if they saw it on my face. It just made me sick, because these are just kids. They should not have to think about any of the stuff that they're confronted with all day long. They just should be able to have their childhoods, and they probably don't. They
Yeah,
probably don't have the freewheeling childhood that white boys their age
yeah, no, mm,
do. So that just makes me feel hopeless and helpless. And it changed how I interact with young Black men, because it was really in there now, those instantaneous reactions. They see them. We
mhm,
think we're being slick when we clutch our purses. We think we're being cool. They see it. They see it on the street when we kind of veer. After that, every time I encountered a Black man on the street, I just said hi.
yeah. Mhm,
Hi, how are you doing?
mhm, yeah, yeah,
Just that awareness really changes. I mean, if
yeah,
it gets in there in your body, I think it just changes
yeah, I think
how
so.
you are in the world after
Yeah,
that.
we're never the same. We're never,
Mhm,
I mean,
mhm,
I'm not the same after this reading,
mhm, mm,
and I just hope that in sharing my experiences with you, you can see that I've processed them pretty thoroughly,
mhm,
and but it's still a challenge to be on the receiving end
mhm,
of such authenticity with the triggering that can happen. I mean, it's one thing to see somebody and have that, but it's on the other hand to be on the receiving end of,
mm.
particularly with forceful women are the ones, but I've had some men too, Black men. It's like, mhm, okay. Even telling you about it, I can tell I kind of, yeah, am
You,
I
s-
going?
you can feel it, huh?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Am I going to be present here? Am I going to be present?
Mhm,
Present.
mhm, mhm.
And can I be?
Well, the experiment will continue, won't it?
Yeah,
We'll have to check in for an update. See how it's going.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's very important in this work to have conversations like this too,
Mhm,
to see. That's just important for me, and I've already said it, to have
yeah.
a visceral, to see and feel what happens inside you
Mhm,
as a testimony. I mean, being at the restaurant, for example,
mhm,
I was telling my husband about it. It was like at least 5 different encounters in that one visit to the restaurant. And that you, as being a woman of such, well, I've already said it, integrity and authenticity, the conversation you have with yourself
Mhm.
and the resolve to decide, is this one to speak up about, or is this one to talk to Ben about, or is this one I just work out, or, you know, that's a lot of energy.
Yeah, a lot of energy. And that was, you're referring to the another story in Blindsided, titled Comfort Food. Yeah, that was a tough one to write too.
Yeah.
I really appreciate your sitting down with me, Patty. This is
Yeah.
good. This
Yeah.
is good.
It is. It is. And I trust that you and I think that there'll be ways that we continue.
Yes, yes, there sure will be. So I'm gonna hit the stop record button and hang on because we can chat for a few more minutes. But I'm
Okay.
gonna stop the recording now.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening.